Come on, Socky. Oh, I'm sorry. Socky, I think, is... he's not sulking exactly because we've been away. But he might be a bit cross still. And he's sleeping on my chair. Oh, hello everyone. I hope you're well. We were away for, I think, about 3 days at the Whitby Literature Festival right across the country. It's about a 5-hour drive, longer for us because we stop in all the secondhand bookshops on the way. And we stopped in Pickering and Helmsley and bought quite a few books. I'm not going to go through all the hauls today, maybe just a couple of things. And Socks was looked after by his Auntie Caroline the whole time while we were away. And last night when we got back, tea time, he was delighted to see us. And he didn't leave me alone. He sat on my lap the whole time, didn't you, Socks? But he was up quite a lot in the night getting his revenge and waking me up and demanding food. But that's okay because we went away and we stayed in a very nice an Airbnb. And there were 7 of us. Some people didn't know each other, but it was a good team. It was a good gang, which is what I love to have on these weekends. You see who can come away and share a house with you, and it used to be called self-catering, I suppose, in the old days. Now it's Airbnb, and it just means you get somewhere really nice to stay, and the price comes right down, and you get to do your own thing. And we decided before we went, Jeremy and I, that we weren't going to race about, as usual, up and down the 199 steps and seeing everything in Whitby, because we've seen everything in Whitby. We had a very specific task to do, and that was me doing my event on the Saturday for this really well-organised festival. I mean, I've done festivals for 30 years. I realised it's almost exactly, slightly over, my first ever public reading of my fiction, and it was as a professional writer. And it was 1995, autumn, the Middlesbrough Festival, and I read in a pub, and I think I've told this story before in here, that I got up to read in this pub, and there's quite a lot of people there because there was a popular playwright that I was double billed with. But just before I began, the doors flew open and every single English teacher I'd ever had in secondary school arrived and took up a whole row, which was just brilliant. And that's 30 years ago. So I'm used to doing festivals, and I'm used to being treated in all kinds of ways. It's a huge morale boost, is what I've just said to the organisers of the Whitby Lit Fest, which I believe has been a big success. They've done really well, and so they should. It's a huge morale boost to authors when you go somewhere where they've asked you to read and they treat you nicely, and they treat you no differently because you're not one of the top sellers or the people off the TV or the famous writers. I was welcomed nicely, and I felt I knew what I was doing the whole time, where I was going and who was going to meet me and who was going to look after me at the venue. It was a really lovely venue called 1891. It's an old church where they used to have book sales, and I've bought things there. And it's been gutted and respectfully, and it's become a really lovely, warm venue with a lovely stage. And I got a full audience, which I was astonished at. I've seen people with much bigger names, bigger profiles than mine, at the same festival doing much smaller venues. And I thought, a corner of the library would do me. But they put me in this church, and they filled it. And it's all cabaret tables, and it was really lovely. And this fella Gavin, who's a novelist, who seemed to know my stuff going back 30 years, which was amazing. He did a nice interview, and I just really enjoyed being an author for once. I always like being a writer, but sometimes you go places and they make you feel like shit. I have done festivals where you've been, and events where it really is not the best treatment. But this was, and it was fab. And my audience stayed and bought books, more than one each. People came with piles of things that they bought off the stall that the Whitby bookshop had provided. A nice woman who, they're all nice people there. I didn't see Fiona this time, unfortunately, who runs it. But there's a really lovely woman who, whose name I don't know, I'm afraid, who was involved in my book events at the Whitby bookshop going back 15 years. And she was there with the stall and all the copies from Snow Books, and Emma at Snow had done this wonderful job of getting everything in stock for them. So they had all the Brenda books and the new chap book, which they produced especially for the festival, The Deadly Boutique, the first chapter of the first book, is a special thing by itself. And so they were selling quite a lot, and I hope they did well. And as I said, people who came and said they'd read all the books from Whitby Library suddenly bought a whole pile of the new edition. All sorts of people, writers who followed me for ages, people who've come new to it, people who've come via Doctor Who, but mostly Brenda and Effie fans, which is so heartening to see. It makes me feel that series is still alive, despite the best efforts of some of the publishers and agents involved. The agent I was passed on to at one point who told me that the characters were dead in the water, and why couldn't I have written it about young feisty heroines instead of old women? I love telling that story. It gets such a shocked reaction from the audience. And I love telling them how that's my stock in trade, putting older women, usually from a working class background, in the middle of genre fiction. That's what I do naturally. I'm giving kind of spooky and supernatural adventures to various aunts and grandmas, and I don't know why. That's something I find really funny. Anyway, that was my Brenda and Effie event, and we had lots of being in cafes and having tea and book shopping and mooching about, and the weather was mild and blue and really kind of amazing for the time of year. Did need a coat at one point, which is unheard of in Whitby in this time of year. So it was a good weekend and really enjoyable. And I wish I'd filmed stuff, but I didn't. I think I was just taking it a bit easy and concentrating on doing the thing I was there to do, which was to give the best event I could. And I didn't do much else. I barely did any drawing. I wrote my journal because that's like breathing. And I talked with the people we were visiting with, and talked with lots of people that I met for the first time at the event. So, yeah, a good weekend. And easy reading as well. That's what I've been doing. I think I've probably said that I suddenly got into, and I can't think whose influence this was or why I heard about them. Probably a vlogger on here, but I've ended up reading and buying a whole pile of Sabrina the Teenage Witch novels from the 90s. And I read the first one, and while I was away, I read the second one. And I'm thoroughly enjoying these. Yeah, they're just fun. And I have got a huge pile of them. Well, not huge, but a pile of them that I want to go on to. It's the kind of tie-ins I really like, where it's not bogged down in complications from the TV show. It's all the best aspects of the show given flight into just a book that's entertaining on its own terms. And I think that's important for tie-ins. And then I reread a real favourite. This is a kind of scholastic book, except it's not scholastic. It's a middle grade book from something called Rainbow Bridge in the 1990s, early 90s. The Worst Christmas Ever. I read this 2 years ago. I think it's Cameron Chaney behind this, actually. He had a pile of middle grade books for Christmas that he did a vlog about years ago, or whenever. This was mentioned, and I looked it up and found it a couple of years ago and read it Christmas 2023 and loved it. It's by Connie Remlinger Traunstein. What a name. About a girl who works in her Italian family's Christmas tree lot where they sell them. And it's coming up to Christmas. Grandma's died, and it's about Christmas traditions. Do you keep them or dump them to move on? And about fitting in with a school where everyone's a bit posh, and she becomes a bit of a snob, and by the end of it learns some decent values, although I don't trust her not to go snobby again. It's just a really, really well told middle grade Christmassy book, and it has a lovely Christmassy atmosphere. And some of the things about the Italian family and their kind of legends and their stories are really good. And I wish it was a longer novel, really. And I wish she'd done more. I looked her up, and there's not a lot else that she seemed to have written. I really like those contemporary set middle grade novels that they published for Scholastic in the States. I don't know what it is about them. I suppose they're all in the idiom of who am I thinking of? You know who I'm thinking of. Judy Blume, where it's a slangy and no-nonsense narrator of a certain age, about 14, 15 usually, who tells us what their life is like and looks and despairs at the adults and finds themselves embroiled in stuff. It's a tone, of course, that comes from the original teen novel, Catcher in the Rye, I guess, and Holden Caulfield and Salinger. But it's how it kind of gets into contemporary fiction. Anyway, that's a genre I really like. So I've been rereading, as I think I've said, Paddington books. I read the first one and then moved on to Paddington Abroad, where the family go to France. I wanted to read the Abroad one because we watched, in a fit of enthusiasm last week, I ordered myself a copy on Blu-ray of Paddington in Peru because I hadn't seen it yet, and we watched it. And I wanted to read a novel, a Paddington novel by Michael Bond, where he went abroad, and we got his OCDs, his neuroses about travel, his passport, his collecting of things and getting into bother and causing a kerfuffle as they go abroad, because the film of Paddington in Peru had none of that. It was the most hollow of movies. I'm sorry, I know people are real fans. I liked the first two. I thought they were well done. I thought the second one even better. In a kind of Empire Strikes Back way, the second film was better than the first. As a film, this Paddington in Peru has a kind of CGI hollowness to it. I don't even think they get the character of Paddington himself correct. He's so upbeat and full of positivity in that kind of dreadful way that people are these days, in this kind of, me nonsense. Me. All about self-improvement. And Paddington has become a bit of a wanker, really. That's awful. But he's so positive about things. When you go back to Michael Bond in the 60s especially, he's a bit of a tosser. Paddington is not curmudgeonly, but he's a stick in the mud. He knows how things should happen. This is why he gives hard stares. He's a kind of, he has an integrity that undermines some of the more pompous characters, or even the Browns when they evince bad faith. When they don't live up to his expectations, his slightly awry expectations. And he can be an arsehole. He can mess about and cause chaos. And it's not just by accident. I think he enjoys it sometimes. And that's why we love the character. He's complicated. In the film, he's become just a bundle of positivity and good vibes in that kind of very American way. And it's the usual thing, I'm afraid. You sell something, a property, to America. This is what P.L. Travers was furious about, to do with Mary Poppins, and why we get that movie with Tom Hanks and Emma Thompson saving Mr. Banks. Because Hollywood, or Disney, takes a British property and just ruins it. It makes it day glow, hollow, upbeat, and all about being a better person. We mentioned to somebody somebody at the weekend, one of our friends, about, watching Paddington Goes to Peru, or whatever it's called. And they said, doesn't that defeat the object of Paddington? The whole point is he leaves Peru. And of course, this, again, is very Hollywoodized and American. He goes back and finds his people, his spiritual people that he came from, but chooses his found family. And you're feeling as if you're watching something very prescriptive. You feel as if this is a kind of self-help book animated by CGI sludge. So not very well done. Everybody was wasted. Poor Julie Walters. I mean, I guess she's, taking the checks, but no, just do better, make nicer films, try harder. Everybody was trying, there was lots. It's a beautifully made film. It all looks fantastic, but none of it rings true. None of it. You don't feel as if those actors, those characters, are really flying about and having these adventures. It's ridiculous. Bring it down, make it smaller scale, make it feel as if it has an impact on the characters. I feel the same about contemporary Doctor Who. Don't get me started, I'll go on about it. But it's the same Disney-fied effect. Obviously, Disney was involved. But I think it would have gone that way anyway. Further away from the heart of characters and to these kind of pretend heights of emotionalism and the way they tell the story. It's histrionic and over bright. I've got lots and lots of thoughts about this. I don't like this trend in filmmaking and in TV making, and I think British creators are doing themselves a huge disservice by making all their work aspire to that kind of look. Yeah, that's what I think. Paddington was never better than when he was stop motion animation and two-dimensional characters around him. I once had a friend of mine, a teacher of English Lit, explain why the original Paddington cartoon with the stop motion 3D Paddington and the 2D characters were the perfect teaching tool for looking at Jane Austen's novels because of the degree of realism of characters, that some are 3D and made of fur and fabric, and some are 2D and they move, and further back there are two-dimensional black and white people who hardly move at all, and that's a kind of model for the way characters are developed in certain novels. The further away they are, the more unrealistic they become, the more sketchy they become, and I love that. Anyway, the original Paddington cartoon made by the BBC is obviously a marvellous piece of work, and compared with it, things like Paddington in Peru just look, I think, shabby and cash grabby, really. It's all money, isn't it? It's all money, and that's why these things ultimately don't last. I don't think people are going to be fond of these films and TV episodes in the future, not in the same way. And I really do sound like an old git, I know, but I don't care. I know what I like. Other books, I did pick up a whole lot of books, and I will tell you what's become of them and what they are. But just going around the little junk shops and bookshops of Whitby, a Clifford D. Simak novel. Look at that cover. The Night of the Poodley. The descendants of one escaped Poodley might wipe out the population of the earth. Now, years ago, I read Shakespeare's Planet when I was a teenager and thought it was the weirdest book I'd ever read. It came out of Aycliffe Library, and I remembered it and never read any more Simak. I don't know why. And then earlier this year, I read The Werewolf Principle. I think that's right, by him. And again, found it really peculiar and wonderful. So I'm taking a chance on this four-square book from the 60s, quite nicely kept. Listen to this. The Poodley was a dangerous thing, not only because it was strong and quick, but because it was intelligent. It reasoned and it planned and it schemed. It could talk, though not as a human talks, probably better than a human ever could. For it could not only talk words, but it could talk emotions. It lured its victims to it by the thoughts it put into their minds. It held them entranced with dreams and illusion until it slit their throats. I wasn't expecting that bit the first time I read it. It just sounds crazy. And then another Michael Bond. This is a repackaged, republished, re-illustrated version of Parsley the Lion, one of his other TV shows. From the 70s. And this came out a little while ago, and I almost bought it then, and don't know why I didn't. But now it was $2.99, so I'm quite glad. This is published by HarperCollins. That's interesting. My publisher for my cartoon books, of course. That seems a long time ago now since I did those. That was like 21, 22, 23. So it's 2 years since Puss in Books came out. This is quite a nice format for illustrated, colourful books, I must admit. And they're quite nicely done, I think, the pictures. Okay, I'm going to go. It's 20 minutes I've been talking, and I know I've let you languish for about a week with no new video content from me on this main channel. I think the members have had an extra one. I've got some news that I can't tell today. I'll give you the news in a couple of days when we announce things. But there's something really interesting and exciting happening in our lives here. And it's been brewing for a couple of weeks, and I will tell you when I can. But it's good news, and it's going to be interesting news for this show. It will impact on this show. And I can't see any more. I wish I could tell you. I feel like bursting it out because it's really good news. If it all works out, it's going to be amazing, and it will have a massive impact on what I do here for this show. That's all I can say. Stick with me and I will tell you. I'll tell you the news in a couple of days. But in the meantime, Socks is fast asleep on my lap. I hope all of you are well and reading nice things. I'm going to have some lunch because I'm starving, and I've spent the whole morning doing admin and catching up and all sorts. I'll be back with you in a day or two, and hopefully by then I can tell you what's up and what's going on. Lots of love, everyone. I'll see you again quite soon. Goodbye.